I only read one book, but it's a good book, don't you know? I act the way I act because the good book tells me so. If I want to know how to be good, it's to the good book that I go. Because the good book is a book, and it is good, and it's a book.
And the Lord appeared unto him, that being Abraham, in the plains of Mamre, and he, that will be Abraham again, sat in the tent door in the heat of the day, laid out on a sun lounger in his speedos and Ray-Bans, enjoying a cool, refreshing beer while watching the ladies go by. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, because although they were stood by him, that by was quite a distance away, and he bowed himself toward the ground, and said, My lord, if now I have found favour in thy sight, now that I have cut the end of my cock off, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant, for taking a rusty blunt knife to my bell end did hurteth liketh a bitch for quite some time, and I once is wont to thinketh that all of that pain and anguish, and the shit that I did take from the other men in my house, including the slaves who were made to cut the ends off their cocks also, waseth all for nothing. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, if you don't as fancieth cracking open a couple of tins this early in the day, and I shall get someone to wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree, and I will cranketh up the gas on the altar, and throweth some burgers and buffalo wings upon it. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and a side order of something new for us you to try. They are called onion rings, and my wife did get us the idea from us all the foreskins left over from whence we did circumcise ourselves. For like us whence we did take a rusty knife to the end of our John Thomas, cutting onions dost also bring tears to your eyes. And besides, we hath already used up all the foreskins that we had left over, so onions will have to do. Comfort ye your heart, after that ye shall pass on, but not in the literal sense by which that phrase will come to be understood, for surely my cooking isn't that bad. For therefore art ye come to your servant, and they said, So do, as thou hast said, and stop bothering us. And Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah, and said, Order for table 5. Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth. And she did say, But we don't have any tables, for they have not yet been invented. And he did point out that one day they would be, and that order for table 5 would be what would be said in a great many kitchens in times to come, for like the thing that he had made last week when he did accidentally spread garlic butter on his toast, it was the future, for he hath tasted it. And Abraham ran unto the herd, and fetched a calf tender and good, and gave it unto a young man, presumably because the old and experienced ones were all busy doing something else more important, and he hasted to dress it, although the calf was having none of it. And he took butter and milk, and a calf which he had dressed, in a sailor's outfit, complete with bell-bottom flares, a neckerchief, and a cute little sailor's hat, and set it before them. And the calf did give all those sat around it that annoyed look that a 5-year-old gives when it is dressed up in ridiculous clothes, and sat in the middle of a room, and fussed over by great aunts. And he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. And they said unto him, Where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, Behold, in the tent, in the kitchen, making sandwiches. Where else wouldst my wife be? And they did say unto him that she may be in the bedroom. And he did reply, Only if the chain from the cooker is long enough. And the 3 men did bump fists with Abraham, and they did laugh amongst themselves. And he said, That being the Lord, in case you are not paying attention, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door, which was behind him, which is something that surprisingly happens more often than is given credit for. For it can almost be guaranteed that a man's wife will nearly always be stood behind him when the man is talking about her to one of his friends. And ignorance of this rule can be the source of a great many unbearable silences, pots and pans being thrown, and a multitude of bags being packed, so that the wife may go visit her mothers. Now, Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age. Seriously, Abraham had already had a telegram from the Queen, and Sarah was expecting one soon, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women, which basically means that it had all but healed up, since at their age, getting to know each other was more akin to trying to push a marshmallow into a money box. Therefore, Sarah laughed within herself, saying, I am waxed old. Shall I have pleasure? My lord being old also, though not as waxed. For the type of pleasure that old folks that are Abraham and Sarah's age would surely not stretch further than making it to the toilet on time, looking after cats, going to bingo at the church hall, and actually waking up in the morning. And the Lord said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child, which am old? Somehow, even though he is an all-knowing deity, he apparently did not know. Is anything too hard for the Lord? And Abraham, who did think about asking the Lord if he could make a rock that was too heavy for him to lift, did point out that the problem was not that there was nothing too hard for the Lord, but that the thing that mattered the most in this instance hadn't been hard for a very long time. And the Lord did give Abraham an understanding look, and did reach into his robes, and when no one was looking, did slip Abraham a handful of small blue beans, and with a nudge and a wink did tell him to only use one at a time, for just one would surely endow Abraham with a mighty rod of iron, a staff filled with the power of the Lord, that must be gripped firmly with both hands when wielding, that has the power to not only lower the drawbridge and send the soldiers to the keep, but smash in the back gates also. And Abraham did laugh within himself, for he did realize that he would surely make a fortune selling knock-off versions of these magic beans, and did consider that after the Lord had gone, he would instruct his servants to dispatch a great many messages to everyone in the land every single day, to tell everyone in the world about them. And the Lord did say, At the time appointed I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. And she should trust in the Lord, for though she may be old, the Lord is older and wiser, and he does know a wise man who does go by the name of Pfizer. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laugh not, for she was afraid. For though Abraham may surely wield the mighty two-handed sword in a way he had not done since his youth, and would surely soon be charging the ramparts, the castle was old and in disrepair, and was full of a great many cobwebs. And lo, the gates hadn't been oiled in a great many years. And he said, Nay, but thou didst laugh, but you won't be laughing for long. And the men rose up from thence, and looked toward Sodom, for they had heard that in that place there's a place you can go when you're shot on your dough. You can get yourself cleaned, you can have a good meal, you can do whatever you feel. And Abraham went with them to bring them on the way, and they did come from the east and head towards the village. Once again, the Lord, who had forgotten that he was everywhere, did go there. And the Lord, who knows everything, including the outcome of any choice that is ever made, said, Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? To nobody in particular, expecting someone to answer when he already knew what he was going to do, or not do, as well as the outcome, whichever choice he made. Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him, because the Lord only seems to know everything when it seems to suit him. For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and get them to do stupid things like cut the end of their cock off, and they shall keep the way of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. And the Lord said, Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, and because their parties are so much better than mine, and because I have let all of this happen, even though it was within my power to stop it, just by turning up in person, as I have done now, right now to Abraham, and telling them to stop, and explaining the consequences. I will go down now, and will see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know, because though he was all-knowing, he didn't know, at that particular time, from that particular place, without going there, even though he was everywhere at once, only apparently he wasn't. And the men turned their faces from thence, and went toward Sodom, but Abraham stood yet before the Lord, apparently not knowing that the conversation was over. And Abraham drew near, and said, Wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Because he apparently did not know God all that well, as he had seemingly forgotten all about the flood, which, for at least one of his descendants, Noah, was still within living memory, being that Noah was at this time still living. Peradventure there be 50 righteous within the city. Wilt thou also destroy, and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are within? Which, let's face it, with God's track record, was a silly question. And let's not as forget that it is within God's power, seeing as he can do anything, to simply destroy the city and leave the righteous who live there unscathed. That be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked, that be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right, because the popular phrase, kill 'em all and let God sort 'em out, had not yet been coined. And the Lord, who had the perfect plan, and did know everything, did get the perfect plan out, and did have a good look at it, and said, If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place, for their sakes, apparently not knowing how many righteous people live there. And Abraham answered and said, Behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, and though the Lord doth have the perfect plan, which at this point the Lord was busy correcting, who am I to question it, be nothing other than which am but dust and ashes. Peradventure there shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous. Wilt thou destroy all of the city for lack of 5? And he said, If I find there 40 and 5, I will not destroy it, pushing his luck as well as the point that the Lord apparently did not have any problem killing innocent and righteous people to deal with the unrighteous. And he spake unto him yet again, and said, Peradventure there shall be 40 found there. And he said, I will not do it for 40's sake, now realizing exactly what Abraham was getting at. And he said unto him, O let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Peradventure there shall 30 be found there, pushing the point still. And he said, I will not do it if I find 30 there, still deviating yet once more from his perfect plan. And he said, Behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, because nobody else seems to want to do it, and he isn't exactly giving the people of Sodom and Gomorrah the chance to speak for themselves. Peradventure there shall be 20 found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 20's sake. And he said, Let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak yet but this once, because Abraham could now see that the Lord was getting a little fed up with his incessant questions. Peradventure 10 shall be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. And the Lord went his way, as soon as he had left communing with Abraham. For the Lord's way was the righteous way, even though it was a mysterious way, mainly because in most cases it was the most inefficient, least obvious, and most illogical way ever devised. And being God, he did not deviate from his perfect plan. Unless, of course, after having spoken to an illiterate goat-herder who lives in a tent in the desert under a tree by a watering hole, it becomes painfully apparent that the perfect plan isn't as perfect as it is supposed to be, and there are holes in it that you can drive 3,000 head of sheep through without touching the sides. That can only be called perfect if the word perfect was the one you used accidentally when you really meant trap. And Abraham returned unto his place. And as the Lord did go upon his way, between this place and that, even though he was apparently in both places at the same time, simultaneously, just as he is everywhere else, he did look once more upon his perfect plan, the one in which he made everything twice, in which he put his prize apple tree in easy reach of Adam and Eve, who, not knowing the difference between good and evil, accidentally did evil, in which he gave men nipples, and made the great whales of the ocean that looked suspiciously like mammals, and mammals that could fly and look suspiciously like fowls of the air, and fowls of the air that couldn't fly, swim, or do anything useful apart from lay eggs. The plan that got so derailed that the Lord ended up having to amend it and flood the whole world and kill everything and all but start again. And it did occur to the Lord that aside from the many spelling mistakes and all the bits that were crossed out, the ring-shaped coffee stains, the pages stuck together with buffalo wing sauce, and the bits that still hadn't dried out, and the odd missing page here and there that either the dog had eaten or the Lord had used when he ran out of Rizzlers on Sunday afternoon when the shops were shut, which in itself was a sign of somewhat dubious planning. It wasn't a bad plan, even if a mere mortal of a man so gullible and stupid that he would cut the end off his own cock, and have everybody else he knew do it too if you told him to, could pick holes in it. And the other two men that did walk with him did look upon the Lord, and lo, the little one did say unto the big one, Holy perfect plan. To which the tall one did reply, Quiet, let the Lord doth hear you, and seeth his own arse, and we shall have to deal with the next chapter all by ourselves. And they did follow the Lord on his way unto Sodom.